We are in the wonderful Victorian house of Naiad and Walter Einsel, filled with a marvelous collection of antiques and, of course, replete with abundant art by both of them. We are in the studio in the house right now where Naiad Einsel works, and she is working right now at her drawing table. What is it you're working on, Naiad?
Well, I'm using the light table of Walter's drawing table, actually, because I'm tracing through, I'm doing the final finished illustration of a group of labels and seed packets that I'm doing for an exhibition hall down in Atlantic City. This is the final thing. What I'm doing now is tracing through from my sketch, which I've done here in color,
right,
and in pencil line. And what I do is I put this light box on, put my good paper down, and then I can see my whole drawing right through it. And I can first trace my line through, and then I get the whole line completed. Then I take it away, go over to my own desk, and start to color it in. With dry marks is what I usually use.
Now, this is the end of a process that has had how many steps to get to this point?
Oh, to get to this, well, it looks like it should only be about 3 processes, but I put things together like a little jigsaw puzzle. And I get my idea first. I do a very rough sketch. You know, I have my limitation of size and everything. Do a rough sketch, and then I do research, and then I start to, try different positions of the person, and I look at a lot of different organs and pianos for this particular job, and I get stained glass research, and then I keep changing things and tracing things over and over again. So if I really showed you all the drawings for each one of these finishes, it would be something like about 20 drawings and all kinds of little scraps and pieces, and people think when they see the drawing just before this one that that's finished art, but it isn't, because there's always something that I see in it that I don't quite like, and then I do another revision. I just keep polishing and polishing till the very end, and there's never enough time. This was a particularly short deadline for the amount of work. It was 26 full-color illustrations in 5 weeks. Which means like 14 hours a day of work. And the reason the studio is as neat as it is now is because this is the very end, and I've gotten rid of all my books that were all over the floor and all my papers and piles, and it was really a terrible mess in here. And I am usually a neat person.
Oh, I know you're a neat person. You're the neatest person I ever met.
Well,
And I know how hard you work, and yet the studio always looks impeccable.
You always come just at the end of a project. No, I do try to. I can't sit down to work really unless the desk is really, at least the desk has to be completely clear, and sort of, sometimes I even wash it first, because I can't concentrate.
Is that one of the many, many areas in which you and Walter are completely compatible? You're both neat people.
Well, we're not exactly on the same level with that. I'm a little more compulsive than he is. He does like to start neat, but he has his own way of finding things in a complete bedlam as it goes along. Then at a certain point he does have to start and straighten up, but he doesn't like it if I go over and straighten up for him, because then he can't, he reaches for something and it's not where it was the last time.
Right. But there are so many ways in which you are extraordinarily compatible.
Oh,
it's really an amazing relationship. I understand you can actually start a drawing, Walter can pick it up and do some more work on it, you can go back to it, and your styles are almost interchangeable. Is that true?
Right, yes. Or the reverse of what you just said, where, like, I especially like help in the beginning. Like, if Walt would do, I'll say to him, Walt, just do a little scribble for me to get started while I go down and make dinner. And he'll do the scribble. And that's all I need. It takes him 5 minutes to do it. I come back, and then I can really get into it, because there it is on paper. Otherwise, it takes me like 2 days to get to that same scribble point.
Sometimes sourdough bread, you need whatever they call that, the starter.
Yeah, right. But that's the way we work when we work together, or sometimes the other way around. He'll start, I'll refine. We can come in on any step of the way. Like, usually we'll talk about a job, and one of us will get an idea, and then the other will say, yeah, that sounds good. And then we start to scribble, do a couple of roughs. And then we have a lot of input just in words. Oh, yeah, why don't you put something like that in there? Yeah, that'll be good, that sort of thing. Then one of us starts working on it, and it just depends on who's less busy at the time. It's always nice if Walt starts first. And then, like, he'll do a rough, and I'll start to refine it. I like the refining part. I like to do research. I know where everything is in the house, where I can find a little book on Chinese mustard seed paintings or something like that, and I'll go and find that and spread all the stuff out. That gets me into the drawing. Then I really start to like to do it. I need a little push into it. Then he'll come in and do inking. Like, for instance, on this job that I've been showing you, this one of the seed packets and the labels, it was really my assignment, but it was such a short deadline that I needed his help. He offered to help. I don't think I asked him. Anyhow, I got all the ideas. I worked out the whole thing, consulting back and forth with him. I'd ask him at the end of the day, what did he think of this or that? And then I did all the line drawing, all the finished line, and figured out what colors I wanted. And then he sat over here, we sat next to one another. While I was doing the ink drawings, he was filling in the color, doing a very nice job with it. Now, in that case, he was just doing renderings. An assistant could do that, but most of the time, he has much more input.
Yes.
Like he makes suggestions and helps me to clarify things in my mind.
Were your styles always so completely compatible, or did that evolve out of all these years of marriage and working together?
Well, when we first met, before we met, we had known each other's work.
How had you met?
Well, I worked at CBS Promotion Art Department. Walt worked at the NBC Promotion Art Department. We had identical jobs, and we knew about each other through mutual friends who had worked at the two networks. And we both admired one another's work because it looked alike, and I think that was because we both had the same influences. We both liked Steinberg and Walter Van Bellen and Jan Ballet. Those were the people who sort of influenced our style. So we used to like one another's work. We'd pay attention to the signatures. And then when we met...
How did you meet?
Well, one of those people who worked at both networks kept telling each other how wonderful the other one was and how come we never met. And then finally, Walt came over to apply for a job at CBS where they paid better, and our mutual friend arranged for me to look at his portfolio. And it was love at first sight. It was that kind of thing. I was so surprised to see that he wasn't this old man with a bushy mustache and a thick German accent, because that was how I always pictured him. And I don't know if he was surprised or not. He's never really told me whether he was what he was expecting. But anyhow, in order for us to have a real date, the first date that we had at the end of the week, of that week that we met, I had a lot of freelance to do over the weekend, and he came back from visiting his family on Sunday afternoon and wanted to come and see me again. I was delighted to have him come, but I couldn't have him come because I had so much work to do. And he offered to come and help me. He said he'd color in things or something, and I said, oh no, we won't get any work done. And he said, yes, I'll come over and help. And he did, and it was terrific.
You mean, started right then and there?
That very, second date that we had, he started to work with me, and then we found it was terrific because we wanted to spend a lot of time together, and we were able to. And and the other thing was that we had identical tastes. When he came to see my apartment, he said, you have to come down to my apartment because we have the identical things. I had 3 white walls and 1 grayish tan wall, and he had 3 grayish tan walls and 1 white wall, and we had the same kind of director's chairs, and we had straw rugs, and everything was painted orange and pink, and little antiques that we were collecting were similar. It was so incredible. And when he said, you have to see my apartment, I thought, oh, yeah. It was just one of those things. But I went down there, and he certainly did have everything exactly like it. So we had to get married because we had to merge everything together.
Yes.
And that's what we did the following year. But that whole year, we were helping one another. And what happened, I think, is that we both improved. I always felt that the two minds together really were making much better work. We were each putting out better things than we had been alone.
Are you at all critical of each other's work?
We're very well, in a nice way.
Yes, you are nice.
We have to be very nice about it. No, we're really not too critical because we really admire one another's work. Like, I'll show him things and, really wanting a good opinion. And, he'll say little things like, why don't you move that a little, or why don't you take that thing out? But very minor. Usually he's very kind with me. And when I go over to look at his work, if I'm invited, I will refrain unless he really asks me, unless there's something that really disturbs me about it. And then I'll say to him, are you going to leave that? Is that the way you're going to really finish that? And, and then he'll say, why? What's wrong with it? And then I'll say, well, it looks like it's a little out of proportion, like maybe it's too big or too small or something. And he might say, oh, no, I think it looks fine. But then afterwards, I notice the next time I go over that he's changed it a little.
Oh, that's nice.
No, because we do feel that each one, that the other person has a really good eye. And, well, I'm always grateful for any suggestions that I can get.
Well, you couldn't have a better live-in critic, friend, support.
That's exactly,
Isn't that wonderful?
We used to sit here and talk back and forth all the time and, play the records and have a really good time together all day, week after week. But now Walt mostly works over in the studio, and it's a treat when he comes over here and has some little thing to do at this table. I'm delighted. It forces me to get to work faster, and I know that I won't have to keep running across the hayfield to ask for opinions and suggestions.
Now, let's walk over to the table over here and look at some of these seed packets you've been working on.
Oh, right.